Welcome to Subramani. Somebody asked me a set of questions which were quite good, and because they are from one of the best colleges, I'm not naming the college. I do not know when they're going to put up the interview, whether they're going to put it up at all. So they asked me some of the questions, so I thought I should share the questions with you. So what are your investing principles? What do you do? And what is the advice you have for others? So first of all, I'm happy that they're asking me two separate questions. For example, I believe in my own life or in my own investments, I have not found too much space for asset allocation. Because of asset allocation, I look at it very differently. I think when I have the basic amount necessary for the next 10 years expenses in debt fund, after that I don't need to look at my debt portfolio at all, because that is also growing and that is untouched. So I will do a separate video on why I have a debt portfolio, but largely the concept is your asset allocation is not fixed. Beyond at a particular point, it has to be excessively loaded in favor of debt if you can't take risk, and at some point it will be excessively loaded in favor of equity because you can take risk. So it changes. The need to take risk also goes away. Then you can again do any asset allocation that you want. I've always been giving this example. Somebody who needs 3 crores to retire and has 15 crores asset allocation. However, when the person believes that he's got no ability to take risk, he should not take risk. So for him or her, that person asset allocation is very different from person who can take risk. So personally, I don't believe in asset allocation, but that is because I have 10 years expenses in debt already, and my day-to-day living can be carried on with one source of income called dividends, and I have other sources of income also. So therefore, I look at asset allocation very differently. But if I were a fund manager managing other people's money, I would love to run a balance advantage fund rather than a pure equity fund, because there are times when I don't want to be in equity from a market perception point of view, not from my personal portfolio. My personal portfolio is always 90% plus in equity. But here I would like to have a BAF so that I can sometimes be in equity, sometimes in debt. Look at Naren's portfolio now. Last time I saw it, it was 30% in equity and 70% in debt. That's not true of my personal portfolio. But that is what I would advise to people, saying, look, the markets have run up too much. 7 straight years of positive return, 7 straight calendar years of positive return in the Nifty can lead to a very big downfall in it. But again, the FIIs can come and make it a 8th year of great positive return in Nifty, right? So it can happen. So be aware of those things. So to me, personally, in my portfolio, there is not much space for asset allocation. There is not too much scope for diversification also. But having said this about diversification, I now have funds which invest in foreign countries, in sectors which I didn't even think I would invest, right? So for example, if you want to invest in startups, you have no choice but to invest in companies which invest in Israel, in Taiwan, in parts of Asia and in US, right? You need a fund which will look at that. I cannot ever do it on my own, so that money has to go into a mutual fund. So some of these things I have done. But I am very clear that when I am handling client money, if at all, which I am not, but if I am handling client money as a fund manager, not as a YouTuber or giving advice on which fund to invest, that's different. But if I were a fund manager, I would be tracking a world MSCI index or things like that, and a world innovation index, because that's the way you can invest in startups. And in India, you can't invest in a startup, right? Startup shares are available only to private equity players, not to the public, and when it is available to the public, it is terribly overpriced, right? It is always an OFS and terribly overpriced. So for me, I need growth. But I need growth at a reasonable price, right? That to me is more important. So am I a value investor? Yes, many times I'm a value investor, but I know that lot of the value can come from growth in a country like India. But if I were looking at companies, investing in companies in say US, I may look for saying, is this industry going to even live, right? So then I would be worried about some of those things. How much will a luxury car really be able to sell? How much will arms and ammunition sell if the whole world gets smarter? Right, so some of these questions I might ask, but yeah, largely this has been my investment philosophy. Growth at reasonable price, value investing, all these things are important, but largely a bottom up investor, so the quality of management is extremely important for me. So largely this is what I do, and why my portfolio is different from what advice that I could give you if I were doing actual fund management, if I were a fund manager, not a fund advisor.